So much about life is that failure, honestly, simply is an opportunity to recognize you have to try again. And the problem is we are ego-driven beings and we get stuck in our egos.
Yeah.
Because nobody who's hard driving wants to admit that they went down the wrong path.
Failure is scary, embarrassing, and can feel like the end. But what if I told you that failure is simply the opportunity to begin again? That's a quote by Henry Ford, and a quote that inspired my oh-so-glamorous co-host, the Diane Gilman, in her 11 Secrets to Success on Gnostic TV's episode. I think that we've been taught that failure is something that you should avoid, when in reality, I do feel like it's where you learn and you grow the most. So, Diane, tell me, what point were you at when you had a significant fail, and how long did it take you to realize that it was simply the opportunity to begin again?
I actually want to say that statistically, if you are in a creative field and you are right 51% of the time, you're considered a winner. That's all you have to do. Be 1% over, half right, and you're right. If you are in a creative field, by the nature of creativity, you are going to need to hone it, mold it, pivot it, reposition it. And if you're stubborn and you think, I'll just hang on and make it happen, sometimes failure is the only way to get you to recognize you're not on a correct path here. You need to make some real adjustments. That's what failure is all about. I would say, as I walked through my career, changing from doing what was really junior based kind of bubblegum clothing to doing shirts and blouses that were all sort of prairie oriented, to I would win until I failed, and then I'd stay too long in the failure syndrome and be slightly desperate and then come up with the next idea. But the two times, I can honestly say, I really felt I had, pardon me, everybody, fucked up my life. I had not. I simply did not maybe have the facility to readjust to what I had decided upon. So the first time was about money, and I was not being treated fairly. And the company I was with, we were a huge success doing painted silk, hand painted silks, and they wanted me to sign away my right to make any money out of them going public on the Hang Seng Index. They said, well, that's what nice girls do. Nice girls aren't greedy. It was unbelievable to me.
I never thought I was a nice girl. What do you mean?
Well, they really thought I was a total moron, and in many ways I was, but not here. So I sued them, and it was horrible, and it was bloody, and it went on forever. And I was incredibly dumb to think I could hold out against an organization now well-funded. But I hung on, and in the final few moments that were possible for me, I got that call from QVC. Unbelievable. So, what I thought was the worst mistake of my life, but I'm going to come to the worst mistake of my life. And then it took me about another 8 years or a decade to fit into middle-aged gene concept, because it took me a long time to get anybody to say yes to it. I would never have been able to travel all over the world doing TV if I hadn't made the brutal and semi-fatal mistake of going up against a business conglomerate as just a single practitioner, suing the hell out of them. And in the end, I won. But it was a Pyrrhic victory. I got very little money for it, but I got my name. I sound like Tina Turner fighting Ike Turner, but it's the truth. I mean, that was what I needed, and then I could start my label again, but that came probably about a year and a half into tele-retail. Second huge mistake. What?
About that. Were you still in the lawsuit when you actually got the call from HSN? Like, you were still actively working?
It wasn't HSN. The call was from QVC. I was still actively in the lawsuit, and I was upfront with them.
I can't.
and said, you can't do it because I can't use my name. I'm in an active lawsuit. And they said, don't worry about that. We've got plenty of guys like you. We'll just call you Diane.
I just can't imagine that feeling that you must have been in literally the day before you got that phone call of going through all this legal trouble and then all of a sudden having this opportunity one day come out of.
But I didn't want the opportunity. That's part of not recognizing in your failure where your readjustment needs to be. And that's why I say to anybody, if you feel you're failing, it may just be a symptom that says, yes, you're sick, but you're taking the wrong medicine. Chugging along doing DG2, massive, huge success. My business partner gets a very virulent form of brain cancer and is very secretive about it. And the whole thing was just crazy. And he passes away. At that point, I wanted to be in an organization that was already peopled with players that could come in, take the success, and vault it. Boy, was I dumb. So I signed this contract, and the nightmare begins. They want to change everything. They don't understand my basic concept, which is the entire point of success. Dressing middle-aged women. The industry dresses young girls. They don't care about this age range. I remember sitting down one day and just weeping, saying, what did you do? You made the worst mistake of your life. About 2 weeks later, I get diagnosed with breast cancer. And I realized that if I'd had my own company, it would have gone under because I needed a tremendous team at this point to hold it together with some form of leadership while I go through whatever regime they have for me, which was, basically chemotherapy, radiation. And when I came back, in hours of midnight to 3 a.m., being back in the studio at 8 a.m., fully made up and on air, I realized my body was too battered to really be able to service that correctly. How it worked out was not only did they keep the business going while I went in to cure myself, then when I turned around and thought to myself, I love this profession, but I can't do it anymore. So I was able to sell my company. And when I did that, I had enough financial flex room to rethink my life and what did I want to do with the rest of it. There were 2 mistakes in my life that I was sure were fatal, and they both turned out to be the key to success.
Do you think that there were times that you were beating yourself up for the decisions that you made in those situations?
Yeah, of course.
And
When I didn't see the key to the door I needed to open, of course.
Yeah. I feel like the most common thing that people get wrapped up in is they make this mistake and then they say, oh, I wasted so much time doing that thing.
I didn't waste time. I didn't. Maybe the first lawsuit, I couldn't work professionally for a couple of years and it was just torture. And I had to make regime for myself like every day just to keep those muscles, those creative, spiritual muscles alive and toned. I think the future, I think time has only one direction, forward. When I got that opportunity from QVC, and I realized pretty valuable information that I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only idiot that had gotten in with the wrong business partners. Once I understood that was a great comfort to me. There were plenty of stupid people who were smart people. My problem was resolved, and other people I knew whose names I'm not going to mention because they never got back their name. They were far smarter than me, far wealthier than me, and they could not solve their problems. So the whole thing seemed a little bit karmic, to tell you the truth. And if I had to say the one thing it taught me was don't get into any situation where you feel trapped.
I really feel that everything happens for a reason. It's one of the reasons why I welcome challenges in my life, because I feel like it's a point for me to grow and it's the universe telling me it's time for a shift. There's something that needs to change. It's something that I kind of like thrive off of. That's the most important thing. And even going back to like wasting your time, you're not wasting your time when you make these decisions. You're building your character. And even if it was a bad choice, you're going to learn so much from that choice and being in that situation that you're going to carry on to the next thing. So you're never really starting over. You're continuing to build your experience, and it'll help you work through future problems or know what to avoid in the future.
I think that just for stubborn people like me, I'll stick with something to the end and I'll blame myself for it not working.
Mm.
When in fact, maybe the best is to just accept failure and shift your focus and try again. That really played into fashion because fashion shifts its focus all the time.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that when you do have these fails, you're really turning things around. You're evaluating things, you're bringing it into the future. And for me in particular, I can remember that, as you know, my dad was an entrepreneur, and he hired me to be an office manager for one of the businesses that he started. And I apparently wasn't very good because he fired me. He hired someone else and she didn't end up working out. And then I asked him if I could come back. And so he made me reapply. I had to interview with him and his business partner again. When I came back around, it was genuinely like I was a completely different person because there was so much that I was able to realize I wasn't doing the first time around. And
Ah, how interesting.
huge for me. I think it had a lot to do with building my work ethic because the first time around, I think I was just comfortable and complacent and just doing what I had to. Where the second time around, I was like, all right, how can I actually think of new things that are going to help everybody else out and make their lives better?
Yeah, I just have found so much about life is that failure honestly simply is an opportunity to recognize you have to try again. And the problem is we are ego driven beings and we get stuck in our egos.
Yeah.
Because nobody who's hard driving wants to admit that they went down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you may be in the center of the universe you would like to apply to, but taking the wrong road. And unless you recognize that, you may really limit your success.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds crazy, but achieving failure can be the most successful road you take. And on the other hand, I remember somebody who was very competitive with me took me aside one day and said, I just want to give you some advice, darling.
Oh.
You're a loser. You're never going to be a success. Give up. When you hear shattering proclamations like that, then it's up to you. That's not your failure. That's somebody else wanting you to fail.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying that I used it as jet fuel, but
Of course you
I
did.
almost immediately recognized that this should have nothing to do with me. So
Mhm.
don't expect everyone to be your cheerleader along the way either. And realize one other thing that took me half a lifetime to come to terms with, which is you may turn to people and you want them to support you and you love your idea. Nobody around me liked it, understood it,
Yeah.
or supported it. And I never walked away from that feeling.
Yeah.
I decided, okay, so these people just aren't meant to be part of the journey. That's what I had to do when you feel you're failing.
Mhm.
Is don't you know you're not on the right path? And what can you do? Maybe you don't want to go for total failure. You just have the time or the funds to readjust yourself and pivot.
So many people don't even recognize their own failure because they're just convincing themselves like it's not that bad. I can stick it out, and staying for too long. I feel like that is its own failure in itself.
I often equate being an entrepreneur to dating somebody. And you know they're not right,
Mm.
but you don't want to be alone. And you figure, I'll just do this for a while. And then they turn out to be really damaging. And those are the situations where I would say, make a clean break.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't stay. But I will tell you, for the biggest success of my life, which was the middle-aged gene, I got virtually no enthusiasm or support. And even after I had hard numbers of going on air and what we sold per minute, people still said, flash in the pan. I got virtually no support from the outside world for going into podcasting either. It was like, that's too modern for you. You're almost 80 years old. I also say in the midst of failure, lose the burnt out ego and go for what can you do with this failure?
Mm-hmm.
What did it teach you? What is left in the ashes for you to be able to use it as fertilizer to start over?
Yep.
And really and truly, what was your major and primary miscalculation? And can you identify it, change it, and start living through it? Because most entrepreneurs honestly live their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I understand that life. All right, let's go on to a quick little would you rather game.
Okay,
Would you rather fail publicly and learn fast or fail privately and take twice as long?
publicly.
Me too. Even though
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing the latter. I feel like I'm doing everything privately and then taking too long. But I would prefer to fail publicly so that I can learn faster. Succeed at something you hate or fail at something you love.
I'd rather fail at something I love and have spent the time loving it and then figure out how to make it better.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything I hate. I feel like that's pouring toxins into your spiritual system, and it's going to have terrible health repercussions.
I completely agree. And I think that even goes back to the whole failure isn't actually the end, because if you're feeling like you're failing, you just need to turn it around and turn it into the success or the win.
Failure is process.
Would you rather fail because you moved too fast or fail because you waited too long?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I've done both. I think I've done more waited too long stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
Trying to identify it, re-identify it.
yeah. I think I definitely do the same, and it's me constantly like reevaluating the same thing, trying to figure out what decision to make. So I'm not making the decision. And I can't remember who it was, but there was some business person who said it's not about making the right choice, it's just about making the choice right. So you have to make a choice and then you have to figure it out as you're going along with what choice.
Don't allow yourself to identify the failure. You're never going to get to the success.
Be known for one massive failure or never be known at all.
Holy shit.
I know this is a hard one for you, especially.
Neither. I can't answer that. There's no good answer. I have to be known. I have to have a voice. It's just so intrinsic.
It's so funny because I think I've always had a voice among my friends and family, but I've never really been the one that's wanted to be like in the spotlight and expanding it until recently. It's all a new thing where I'm suddenly feeling like, yeah, I do need to be in the spotlight. I do have a voice and I need to talk to people about it. And last one is, would you rather lose all your money or lose all your confidence?
Well, at this point in my life at 80, I don't think I want to be living out on a sidewalk with a Birkin bag begging for $20 bills. So I'd have to say confidence. Because my confidence is always on the line anyway. I'm always thinking to myself, did I make the right decision? Am I putting everything into it? Am I good enough to be in this category? I mean, I am constantly revising my deliverance and performance and trying to perfect it, and at the same time self-critique it.
Yeah.
So confidence is a very
Good for you.
fluid situation for me. Yeah.
All right. Well, close us out with your final thought on failure as an opportunity.
So now I'm in a totally new category, which is podcasting and also doing a bi-monthly blog for Substack. I enjoy writing. I enjoy speaking. I have a million topics within fashion and not that I'm fascinated with. You know, we found through doing 3 different podcasts, 80/40, this one. How do you feel at 80 about the same thing you're talking about at 40 years old? Too Young to Be Old, all about growing old, growing older better, and Fashion Thursdays. And I thought when we started these, Too Young to Be Old would be the star. Everyone would want to know how to age better. and who cared about fashion. And then it turned out everybody cared about fashion and nobody cared about aging. And so I guess what I would leave you with is you cannot take your hunches and your beliefs and your intuitions and carve them into stone. You have to listen to the results. You have to let them integrate into your whole emotional system and seep into you. So, ask me on a beauty level about all the things that drive me crazy about the cosmetic industry as all of us, you and I, are growing older. And one basic point I will tell you is if you have made the decision to have natural gray hair or white hair like me, you can't find an eyebrow pencil in the right color. Oh, it's so weird. You go out into the market and yeah, there's like warm blondes and beiges, but that doesn't look right with salt and pepper. Until you get to Prime Prometics, which is literally the only eyebrow pencil on the market that comes in a gorgeous shade of medium gray. It looks natural. It is a very thin pencil, so you can actually feather in the lines. Very easy to work with and stays on for hours and hours. So if you want to bring your look closer together where everything melds and you want a more authentic look in your makeup, because it's so weird to put on your makeup and then have to put on a different color than your hair for your eyebrows. No, you do not have to suffer that way anymore. Prime Prometics, their gray eyebrow pencil, is superb and truly in an entire cosmetic market. It stands head and shoulders above the rest and is truly unique and tailored to us older girls. Thank you, Prime Prometics. And of course, go to primeprometics.com, type in our code, and get a discount. You are going to love this product. It is truly tailored for us older girls, and I am so grateful to have it in my life and my beauty kit. And be honest, this is what people see me as. This is what people want me for. And you need to be able to, in a very nimble way, readjust your beliefs. Not easy at 80.
But you do it.
Yeah,
You do it.
I do it consciously.
All right. So remember that failure is simply the opportunity to begin again. Again, that's Henry Ford, and it is one of Diane's 11 secrets to success. If you're interested in finding out the other 10, there will be a link below to Gnostic TV's episode of Diane, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.